Hello, my name is Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss Fantasy Formula 1. Before we begin this video, I just want to quickly remind you to please subscribe to the channel. If you don't like it after a week and you get annoyed seeing my videos in your inbox, you can just unsubscribe, that's totally fine. I just want to ask you to please give it a chance, as like 70% of people who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, and I really want to hit 3k as soon as possible. But thank you so much for the support, and I'm sorry that this video wasn't out yesterday. Usually I like to get these team selection videos out on the Monday after a Grand Prix, but sometimes life gets in the way. We have a lot of things to discuss before Monaco, because Monaco is such a special race on the calendar. Not just race-wise, but also F1 fantasy-wise. But before we discuss Monaco, we have to quickly look at Imola, because what happened in Imola does impact my decision-making for Monaco. So in Imola, I ended up getting 172 points, 31 points from Piastri 2X. A lot of people had Piastri 2X, so that was not the problem. Very happy buying Alex Albon, 18-pointer, way more than I expected him to get. I was hoping for maybe, a 10-pointer. 18 is definitely more than I bargained for. Isaac Hadjar, 6-pointer, totally happy with that. Unfortunate that he got a price drop. And then Colapinto with a 0-pointer and Bortoleto with a -2. At least they don't decrease in price, right? And I really can't ask for much more with them two in my team. And then, McLaren keeps performing, 82 points, really solid weekend. Why was this such a disappointing weekend then? Well, obviously, Mercedes only scoring 6 points after that Antonelli DNF and George Russell being outside the top 5 for the first time this season. It was just a disastrous weekend for Mercedes. And we discussed the option of selling Mercedes a lot on my deadline stream. And I did mention that the only way where I would think that would be like a reasonable move is that either Max Verstappen just completely dominates and wins the race, takes fastest lap and all that stuff, or Mercedes gets a DNF. And I didn't think that was that likely that either of those two were going to happen. And instead I ended up getting Alex Albon. And listen, I'm very happy getting Alex Albon in, but my decision making was very easy. I didn't even really consider doing the Mercedes to Red Bull Racing move, because if I did that, I would not be able to afford Alex Albon. And listen, both of those things that I said would be a really good switch to Red Bull Racing ended up happening. Max Verstappen got his season high score of 57 points, completely smashing it out of the park, winning not only the race with that fantastic move into turn 1 on Piastri, but also getting fastest lap and driver of the day, both very deservingly. And then the DNF on Antonelli, and then Russell got screwed by strategy. Literally everything went wrong with the Mercedes asset, and now I'm sitting here in kind of a tough situation, because looking at the budget building projections on F1 Fantasy Tools, it doesn't look great for Mercedes, especially not on a low scoring track such as Monaco. So a lot of things to think about how this impacts my transfers and my strategy in Monaco. I ended up using 3 transfers, as you can see down at the bottom there, and the 3 transfers was getting both of the Haas drivers out, as well as getting Alonso out for Albon, Colapinto, and Bortoleto. And again, the transfers I ended up making were good. It's just that I ended up losing out a lot of points to those of you who did end up going with a differential option of Red Bull Racing, or who ended up downgrading Mercedes down to Williams. Williams got like a 40-point haul, which is really, really good for those of you who ended up going with Williams to set up for a Limitless in Imola, or a Limitless in Monaco. But despite that, and despite the DNF on Mercedes, I ended up getting the tiniest of blue arrows. So technically, my rank increased after this weekend. But granted that it's still quite early in the season, and ranks are really, really close together, and I'm only at around 85k, and the blue arrow was by less than 1,000 ranks. It's pretty much equal to just a plus minus nothing of a week. I just now realized that I've forgotten to update the team value. So the team value up there is actually incorrect. I'm not going to re-record this now, but we can look at that in the next section, what my team value actually is. But overall, I'm happy with the transfers that ended up making. Avoiding the Ocon DNF also really good, but obviously it could have been a much better weekend if I did not have Mercedes in there. Well, now I'm facing a really tough decision whether or not to keep Mercedes for Monaco. So let's move over and sort of tinker with the team a bit and see what kind of transfers I could end up making in Monaco. So the team value is up at 111.4 million, which I do still feel like is around average or slightly below average. But the team then looks like this. And Colapinto, Bortoleto, completely fine to hold. Obviously, I bought them in to be long-term holds at 4.5 million. And the plan I had last weekend, right, which I can do, is I could do Isaac Hadjar to Pierre Gasly because of Pierre Gasly's 0.6 million decrease and Hadjar only decreasing 0.2 million. And while this is still a perfectly fine move to make and one move that I could end up making, just using one transfer, saving 3 transfers for Barcelona, the problem now is Mercedes, or rather, should we consider Mercedes to be a problem? And for that, let's move over to the budget building side. But first, I just want to quickly shout out to a really nice bit of information on Twitter from Ewan at F1 Fantasy Pole Position. And he posted, or rather a reminder, that last year there was only one overtake in the top 10 at last year's Monaco GP. And this list provides what each position would score in F1 Fantasy if they qualified and finished in that same position without any overtakes. So first would score 35 points, second would score 27, third would score 23, down to 2 points, right? And I do think this is quite important because this will influence some of my decisions. Again, Monaco, it is bad weather in Monaco right now, but we're expecting the weather to be nice in Monaco over the weekend, meaning that there's probably not going to be any crazy rain strategy blunders. Shout out Ferrari. And we're expecting there to be a very, calm Monaco GP unless there are crashes and such involved. And looking at the budget builder, Mercedes now is in a position where they could fall behind. And what I mean by that is that Mercedes needs 33 points to increase 0.3 million. And if they reach this, which they definitely could on a normal weekend, I mean, if you just go back and look what Mercedes has scored so far this season, results would indicate that they are likely to reach 33 points. I mean, this was the first weekend where they did not hit this. But again, it is Monaco, and Monaco, as we know, is infamously low scoring. If we actually go back, now obviously it's different where Mercedes was in terms of pace on the grid. But if we go back to 2024, we can actually see what these premium assets scored in Monaco in round 8. Red Bull ended up scoring 8 points, but this was obviously because of the DNF on Checo Perez. And Mercedes ended up scoring 46 points right here. So they were clearly the slower team between Ferrari and McLaren, so they were the third fastest team, and they ended up getting the 46 points. So Mercedes could definitely reach the 33-pointer. If they do, I think they're perfectly fine holds no matter what their score is. We just really, really need them to hit that 33-point mark. Why? Well, because if they don't, they really fall behind. Well, at least my budget, right, will fall behind those who are currently on Red Bull Racing, since Red Bull Racing is, guaranteed to increase. I'm not saying that Red Bull Racing is that much better than Mercedes in Monaco. We don't know that yet. And I do think Monaco, for 2 reasons, right? Monaco, overtaking is very difficult. We really need to know the pace of the cars. And again, we don't know. Ferrari are probably bringing upgrades to Monaco. Will they be competitive? McLaren, how fast are they in qualifying? Max Verstappen, he will probably be up there. Mercedes, will they look good? They really did not look that good this week, but so did Ferrari, and then Ferrari and Mercedes ended up having kind of swapped weekends, with Ferrari having a good weekend and Mercedes having a bad one, whereas in qualifying it looked to be the kind of opposite. Obviously Kimi Antonelli was also out in Q2, so it's not like Mercedes were looking likely to have a great weekend, but at least Russell was on P3 in qualifying. So we need to really look at FP1, FP2, FP3 and see what the pace looks like of these cars. But it's going to be really difficult to call because this year, even though McLaren has been dominant so far this year, they've been dominant in race pace, and they were really dominant in Imola. Max Verstappen was in a league of his own. It's been really even in terms of quali pace. So even though McLaren has been dominant, it's not been that big of a difference, even to Russell and also to Verstappen in the qualifying pace. So in a place like Monaco, that is going to matter a lot. So we really need to look and try and find some information, especially in FP2, what the quali pace looks likely to be. So if I don't want to go with Mercedes, I could end up just straight up swapping Mercedes to Red Bull. I do have the money for that. Then, though, I don't have the money to upgrade Hadjar to Gasly. And, is Gasly someone I must have in my team? No, definitely not. So either of these two transfers could work out. The third option, which is a bit more on the crazier side, is to go to Williams. If Williams look like they are, once again going to be up there competing for the top spots. Williams switch here would allow me to upgrade Isaac Hadjar to a Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda also looking decent on the budget here. Only needing, -2 points for a +2 increase and an 11 points for a 0.6 increase. The problem with Yuki Tsunoda, though, is that he's not been great in qualifying, and he gained 10 positions, and he only got a 9-pointer for that, because obviously he got a -5-pointer from qualifying, from the crash he had in quali. So if Yuki Tsunoda cannot perform in qualifying, is he that good of an option for Monaco? And then, by extension, will Red Bull Racing be good in Monaco then as well? And again, let me just quickly remind you again what he needs to do to score an 11-pointer. If we go back to this, he would need to, either with an overtake or positions gained, be probably 7th or above. Could I see Yuki Tsunoda doing that? Sure, but it's not something I would be willing to bet on. So I don't think this is an option now. I guess we'll wait and see how good Williams look. But this is probably the best option budget-wise for my team. But with the relatively calm Imola Grand Prix, there's a bunch of different cheaper assets you could end up going for. Tsunoda's good. Hulkenberg having a good weekend again makes him a decent option. Do I think he'll score 5 points? Probably not. But again, Gasly, 0-pointer. Albon, 0-pointer. Even Stroll only needing 3 points here are all decent option. And then obviously Colapinto and Bortoleto cannot decrease in price, so they're always good for budget building purposes. Hadjar at 5.3, I would like to sell him now because I don't see him scoring 9 points ever in Monaco, unless he has a blinder of a qualifying. And he has had some pretty good qualifying performances so far this year, but I just don't see him getting 9 points here. And Hadjar with the 0-pointer in round 6 and now the 6-pointer in round 7, if he has a bad score in Monaco, like a 2-pointer or below, he looks likely to keep dropping in the future. And if he does do that, then he's going to be down at 4 million, at some point soon. And I would like to offload him now so I can buy him back later, which is the one thing speaking against the just buying Red Bull Racing aspect of this. One of the reasons that, I'm worried about Mercedes is, right, if Mercedes cannot score those 33 points that they need for a 0.3 million increase, I will fall behind on Red Bull Racing and Ferrari if I want to switch them in the future. And that's the thing that scares me about holding Mercedes. But I sort of just have to look at the previous year's data of how many points Mercedes scored then, and just hope that Kimi Antonelli can keep it on track and hopefully put it in a good performance. But he seemed a bit shaky as of late, and his performances hasn't been as good as they were at the start of the season. So it's a very, very difficult one. I'm not likely to use my Limitless here. I don't think my team is well enough set up for that, and I would rather use my Limitless in Spa or Hungary at this point. And I think I've sort of committed to that now. But if you have Williams in your team right now, and whichever cheap driver you could afford to upgrade, if that's Albon or whoever, I definitely do think that Limitless could be a fantastic opportunity here in Monaco. So if you're on a Williams strategy and you haven't used your Limitless yet, I would definitely recommend you do so. Personally, though, I'm gonna hold on for that Limitless a bit further and maybe use it in, or probably rather use it in either Hungary or Spa. So to summarize, it's a very, very difficult weekend to call. It's going to very much depend on what we see in FP2, as well as quali simulations and race pace simulations from F1 Fantasy Tools. But the two assets that I'm even looking at selling right now are Mercedes and Hadjar. I'm very unlikely to move Albon to Tsunoda, even though Tsunoda looked good for a price increase. Just because I prefer Albon straight up, and I haven't seen enough from Yuki Tsunoda in qualifying pace in that Red Bull to convince me to go for him over, selling Hadjar for a Gasly. But so these 5 assets look safe, and I will probably keep them. It's just whether I sell Hadjar, Mercedes, or both. And those will end up being my transfers for Monaco. So let me know if you agree or disagree. Which one of those 3 options should I go for? should I go for Red Bull Racing? Should I go for Gasly, or should I go for like Williams plus Tsunoda, or Williams plus someone else in the space for Hadjar? Let me know in the comments. Like the video if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next video, my final thoughts on Thursday or Friday, as well as a deadline stream on Saturday afternoon, as always. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.